Hi everyone, this is Danielle. I'm recording a screencast video on the process essay. So one of your classmates was kind enough to volunteer their process essay draft, which I've copied and pasted into this Word doc here, which I'm going to go through. I've also pulled up the two articles, I'm not quite sure what to call them, that you were directed to in terms of here's what a process essay is. This is the first one, and then this is the second one. So for the first one, what I did is I just kind of pulled out the primary takeaways from this. Of the two sources, they both provide examples of process essays. I'd say the startup, how to start up your email client is a better example. The Kool-Aid one it's not bad. It's I don't know. There's something about it I just don't like. I think this one is just a little bit more formally written. It's a little bit longer. It's not. They're both decent. But yeah, I kind of like the email one a little bit better. So in terms of this particular source, I guess I would call it, the major takeaways, I just tried to boil them down here, is so the first thing obviously is don't write about something that is too complicated. And that's because of the genre of the process essay. The process essay is designed to be an essay that is, hey students, let's start working on putting paragraphs together, and let's try to do that in a way that's not overly complicated. Like, we're not going to dive into a research paper. We're not going to dive into academic argumentative writing, or what's called American academic English, right away. So a process essay is a nice way of moving from working on paragraphs, and which is what you guys have been working on and doing a really good job on, and kind of putting them together. And then also thinking about topic sentences, for each of those paragraphs. So the genre is meant to be not complicated. So it's meant, right, because the focus is on, let's take paragraphs, have the paragraphs themselves be coherent and tied together with a topic sentence, and then have, multiple paragraphs that make sense, like, all together, and then to create one process essay that makes sense. So by design, the process essay is kind of like, I don't want to call it an entry level essay, but it's a low stakes essay. So it's not meant to be like, you're going to go from, working with different paragraphs to now you're going to be writing in this more complicated genre, right? So that's why you don't want a topic that's super complicated. And that includes not needing a topic that's accompanied by visual aids. I'm sorry if you hear beeping. There's a FedEx truck backing out of the driveway, or not the driveway, but the road. Sorry, I'm recording outside at the moment. So you also have to excuse me if I cough, because I do have allergies. So the visual aids are saying, hey reader, I need visual aids to provide additional information for you to understand what it is I'm talking about. So that just states that you can't just talk about it textually, like with words, right? You need the visual aids. And for example, like the process essay is kind of like a less complicated version of an instruction manual, which is a genre I teach in English 221, which is technical writing, technical report writing. And their first major assignment is an instruction manual, and they have to include visual aids as part of that. So it can't just be text, right? It's but they use graphical elements, right? So it's formatted professionally, like with bullet points and things like that. So, but this is a very narrative. It is narratively written, meaning it's written in full sentences and in paragraphs. You're asked to have topic sentences, and You're also asked to include that human dimension in it as well, which is one of the points that I'll get to in a second. It also includes this third point here, is to be very aware of your transitional writing. This is actually a note that I would give to all of my students and all of my writers, is transitional language. I can't talk about this enough. It doesn't matter what class I'm teaching. I'm constantly giving notes about transitional language. Here they call it tags. I'm not crazy about that word. They're probably calling it tags because it's a process essay. So having a transitional tag, and I'll explain the difference between transitional writing and transitional tags in a minute. But um, basically, what they're saying here is, right, you don't want that what's called bullet point or choppy writing. So if you've ever, and that's one thing that can lead to awkward writing. If you've ever been told you have awkward writing, I've been told I have awkward writing not because I have choppy writing, but because I'm a notoriously wordy writer, like I am a wordy speaker. Um, but there are sometimes people, um, particularly engineers. I'm not calling anybody out, but I've worked a lot in my 15 years of teaching with engineers. I've taught writing for engineers and writing in the sciences. Sometimes they are just used to writing in a very short, Spartan way, and so they're just used to that, and so it's harder for them to, or they're just not harder for them. They're just not used to writing in a way that isn't short and choppy, just because that's normal for that particular discipline. But this is not necessarily specific to that, but here they're saying you don't want to write like you're writing a bullet point list, right? You don't want to say like, and then this happened, and this happened, like, and then this happened. They're basically saying like, stay away from that kind of conversational type of writing. Write the, and then this, and then this, and then you do this, and then you do this, which I imagine, based on how you are all doing really well on the paragraph writing, that you won't be doing this. But you also want to stay away from like, firstly, second, thirdly. I mean, it's okay to do some of that. Like, I do that as well, as long as you don't overuse it or abuse it. I think it's fine. And they provide a note here that I completely agree with, and I would tell students to do all day, every day, which is really just free write. Really what they're just saying here is to free write, the pre-writing technique, which is just write it. They're saying here just write all the and thens, but it doesn't have to just be the and thens. It can just be whatever. The whole point here is to just write it out and then go back and make it better, right? And that's just the process of writing. So it's just a matter of not getting stuck on, okay, what do I say rather than and then? That's what you don't want to get stuck on, because it's better to just say, okay, I'm gonna say and then do this, and then do this, and then do this, right? Or whatever you're writing. If you need to repeat it, just repeat it. And then go back and then get rid of them and figure out what sounds better, what makes, in terms of the writing style. In terms of transitional tags, so when we talk about transitions, we're talking about, so in your sentences, right, you have a sentence and a sentence and a sentence. So, we talk about, okay, what's the main idea in the sentence, right? What's the main idea in the sentence? How you transition from one main idea to another main idea is very important in writing, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. Transitional writing is it can be very easy, but it can also be very complicated, and you can actually overlook it pretty easily. Transitional tags are, in this source focuses on, trying to help you navigate what to write about when you're writing a process essay. And then they give you transitional tags. These are transitional tags. They're called tags because they're short words, or, I guess phrases, because some of them are 2 words. So those are tags. And The only I'm the only other tags I ever talk about in writing are what are called attributive tags. And attributive tags are when you are bringing in sources into writing and you have to reference that that's the authors saying something, so it's not to be confused with you saying it. So you attribute the work to the author. It's different than citation. Um, but if you don't provide the attributive tag, meaning you don't make it clear to the reader that it's the author saying something, the reader can easily be confused thinking that it's you saying it rather than the author saying it. So, um, and it's just as simple as just a tag, just a name, right? So tags are just very short, like I'm just gonna tag this onto here, right? And that's why it's called a tag, because it's pretty short and sweet and simple, but important because it has a lot of rhetorical meaning, and it really helps the reader to kind of understand where you're going transitionally. So that's why transitional tags are hopeful and important. So you definitely want to be doing that. Um, I am going to talk very briefly about the difference between transitional tags and transitional writing. And I found a place in this student's work where they are doing transitional writing. So, and I'm going to show you the difference between. So I just showed you what transitional tags are. Transitional writing, which is more complicated, is I actually call it backward forward writing, which is transitional writing, and it's a really effective type of writing, and backward forward writing means that, so there's a sentence here, right, and then there's a sentence here. And the backward forward is when, so in this sentence here, there's going to be one main idea. And the main idea, this particular process essay is on refinishing automobiles, which I believe has to do with painting. Don't worry, I have notes. So this particular sentence says, firstly, you need to remove the existing finish. This can be done chemically with a paint softener, stripper, or mechanically by sanding. Right? The sentence has a particular main idea, which is about removing the existing finish. That's the main idea. And then the writer proceeds to give examples of how that can be done. The main idea in the second sentence is about, or says, should you offer the chemical option, be sure to remove any residue before undertaking the next step and dispose of it correctly. So the main option here is about what happens if you opt for the chemical sorry, I am not familiar with free finishing, so I'm struggling to access the language for it. The main idea is about if you opt for the chemical option of removing the finish, right? That's the main idea. So the backward forward writing here is when the writer starts this sentence is first, so how do you connect those two ideas? Backward forward writing is first, you refer back to something that you talked about in the main idea, or talked about something or reference something in the previous sentence, and then you move on, you move forward and connect that idea to something else, to the main idea in the next sentence. That's backward forward writing. So the backward writing here is that they mention the chemical option. So even though the main idea in the previous sentence is about removing the existing finish, the backward writing they're doing is they're re-referencing the chemical option, right? Because they talk about this can be done chemically or it can be done mechanically. And then the backward writing is, should you offer the chemical option, right? That's the backward. And then, should you do this? And then here's the forward. So that's transitional writing, is that referencing something from the previous sentence and then moving forward to connect that to a new main idea in the sentence that you're now working with. That's actual transitional writing. Versus transitional tags, which are those short, 1 or 2 words, occasionally 3 words. This one's 4 words at the same time. Just say simultaneously or simultaneously, whatever. So, right, or this one is after a few hours. Like this getting a little bit wordy, but like here they have simultaneously. So at the same time, simultaneously means the same thing. Because we also want to make sure we're not being wordy. That's what we want to edit for concision. So I just wanted to give you an example of the difference between transitional tags and actual transitional writing. They're not the same thing. Rhetorically, they have similar purposes. But there's something to be said for if you just use a transitional tag when you should actually be doing transitional writing, because if you put all of your transitional writing in one word, one transitional tag, you're making that word do a lot of work rhetorically, and sometimes it can't bear the weight of all the rhetorical work that it needs to do. It's like, no, actually you either need a full sentence between here, or you need like you need to do more of that backward forward writing. Like you need a fuller transitional, like actual transitional writing here. So, I'm sorry, I'm getting all these, like people just won't leave me alone. Okay, the other thing they brought up is this human dimension part that I mentioned earlier. So this is important, of course, to the process essay, because you don't just want to start off with like, I'm trying to think of like what I would write about if I were doing a process essay. I keep asking myself this question and I'm like, I have zero idea what I would write about if I was like, all I do is work. I'm like, all I talk about is writing. Let me see here. What process am I trying to explain? I mean, I could talk about writing a paragraph, but geez, is this all I have no hobbies. This is really sad. Okay, I'm gonna cry after this video. But you don't just want to say like you don't want it to be bland, right? You want to, whatever your topic is, including this refinishing topic, you want to have it connecting to your readers on the human level. You don't just want to be like, a robotic automaton explaining things. That's getting into professional technical writing and the instruction manual, which is very much, it's not robotic, but it's a very professional type of writing, where it's not, again, it's not that doesn't have that automaton type of writing, but it has a specific purpose and goal and audience. So it's not meant to be like dismissive of the human element, but it's more like, hey, let's get to the point, Whereas here, you do want to kind of relate your topic to the human element, which is one of my notes for this particular introduction, is I do think that that's missing. So that's going to be something that I mention. Something else I meant that source mentions, allow one of your steps to stand out from the others. In other words, don't let, I could left that tick mark there. Don't let all the steps in your process feel equally important. Very existential note here. Equally important means equally unimportant. I think when I first read that, I just stared at it for 10 minutes. I was like, whoa, like my mind exploded. But yeah, so, and then they talk about like add a cautionary warning or a safety something, or, you know, I personally am wishy-washy about this note. Allow one of your steps to stand out from the others. I guess you could. I mean, I don't know that it's the most important thing in the world. I'm not persuaded by it, I think, from the source, because I'm very much a writer that's like equal balance. Like, it's important to give equal weight to everything. So when they say equally important means equally unimportant, I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily believe that. So I'm taking a little bit of issue with the source, but I leave it to you. I'm not, I leave it to you to determine how you want to deal with that. Obviously, if you have something that, just like I would tell my students who are writing instruction manuals, a lot of them are working in with very technical things. They have to have safety, cautionary warnings, hazard warnings. So it's not unusual. So, or anything like that. So if you feel like it's necessary or helpful, by all means, add it, or if you want one of your steps to stand out in whatever way you feel like it's helpful, do it. But, that's just my personal take on it. The last thing they mention is to be careful of your pronouns, which is an important note. And then their main cautionary warning here is to just be consistent. And I would tell you the same thing, is to be consistent with your pronouns. If you're using I, the first person, stay in the first person. If you're using you, I believe this writer is using you, stay in the second person. If you're using the third person, stay in the third person. The thing is, you don't want to jump. These are called narrative modes, which you might have heard before when we talk about first, second, and third persons. The thing is that you don't want to jump around between them. You might jump around between first and third in academic writing, like a research paper, like an argumentative research paper. Maybe. Not often. Generally, you'd always be writing in the third person. Unless you're in one of these kind of more funky genres, like the process essay, or creative writing genre, which I consider a funky genre because I don't do creative writing. And what they do, it's not funky, it's just different for me, right? Because it's do whatever you want, right? So it's there you can write in whatever you want. You can switch in and out of narrative modes however you want. Not necessarily, but you have to have reason behind it. But it's just that you want to be very consistent, just like you want to be consistent with your verbs, like what verb tenses you're in. You want to be consistent with your narrative mode. Because if you switch from first to second, or second to first, or first to third to second, your reader's going to be like, I'm confused. It does what we call jolting the reader. It jolts them, like, because there's subjectivity that comes with pronouns. Like I recently gave feedback on for my literature students, and whenever they said we, I would tell them, and I gave them feedback just like I'm giving this. I gave screencast video feedback, and whenever they would say we, I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't ask to be a part of this argument. Like, take me out of it. It's an alienating process when you include me without my permission. So it comes with a level of subjectivity that your reader may or may not want. And so your reader might then be alienated and then might have a problem with how you're writing, whether they like your topic or not. So it could be as easy as the wrong pronoun for your reader to be like, nope, I don't like it. Don't like it. Don't like you. Don't want to read anything else by you. So that's why we have to be careful about pronouns. That's why third person is considered the best, because it's the most objective. Arguably, it's the most objective. Whereas first and second, you get really subjective. You not so much, because I mean, you also has that you and you, like the royal you, like all of you. So it can be less you. The first is a really funky. So when you start getting into the we and the our and the us, it's like, hey, now, I did not ask to be included in this. You can say I all you want. Not necessarily. You don't want to abuse that. But when you start saying we and us, that becomes a problem for the reader. Okay, so those are the sources from this, from about like what the process essay notes are, essentially, to kind of sort of boil it down. So I'm gonna go through this. I'm gonna use track changes, and I'm gonna make comments where I feel like I'm gonna make comments. It's not very long. I double spaced it so it looks longer than it is. I'm gonna just make it a little bit smaller, a wee bit smaller. So I'm just gonna start with the introduction, which is just this. So it says, refinishing an automobile requires completion of several processes, many of which would slip the mind of even an avid enthusiast. Refinishing is costly, which often results in classic automobile owners undertaking this task themselves and achieving less than desirable results. To refinish an automobile successfully, it is important to understand the entire process. Okay, so a few notes I have about this paragraph, or this introduction. So my first question is, what's refinishing? I have no idea. I actually had to look it up because I was like, I think refinishing is like, I know about refinishing furniture. So I think refinishing is like redoing the painting. So I think it's that. But the writer does not explain what it is in the introduction. So that needs to be done. The human dimension part is missing. So that could be added, and that could be added in a variety of ways. He brings up car enthusiasts, classic automobile owners. I mean, he could talk about, like, the writer here could be addressing, like, sorry, the FedEx person is here. Yes, that is me. Okay, thank you. Sorry, that's FedEx. So this, to bring in the human element, for example, could talk about, like, looking at your car, are you frustrated with how the sun has faded the paint of your car, or I don't know, or if the goal is to, the reader might also want to reconsider or more fully understand their audience. If their audience is like, who is refinishing their cars? Like, I'm not refinishing my cars. I'm just a normal car owner. I don't even own cars. I lease cars. So, like, I don't refinish my cars. But I imagine there's a lot of people out there who do refinish their cars. But even doing it themselves, like, that's a big job. That's an even, like, you have to say that there's a market for people who have their cars refinished professionally, like they take it to a place, and then there's an even narrower group of people who do it themselves. So the writer might need to really think about like who is my audience of this process essay? Is it these, is it car enthusiasts? Because if it is, then bringing in the human element would be addressing those car enthusiasts. Maybe it's that they've recently purchased a new car, or they've purchased an old car and they've, are looking to, I don't know, right? But or like the sun has faded, the paint on their car, or maybe their favorite car has lost the sheen and the glisten that they love so much about their favorite car. I don't know, but there's a way to bring in, there's the human element here. I think that could be done effectively, while explaining what refinishing an automobile is, which wouldn't take a whole lot of space or time, and also maybe having a better understanding of who the audience is for this. Grammatically, this first sentence I think is fine. Refinishing is costly. A comma always goes before which. But before I move on, I am going to make that comment here. So if I say, what is refinishing? Who is your audience? How can you bring in the human dimension in your intro? So, which often results in classic automobile owners undertaking this task themselves and achieving, and this would actually be all hyphenated, less than desirable results, because less than desirable would all work as a compound adjective to qualify or describe results there. To refinish an automobile successfully, it is important to understand the entire process. Okay. Sorry, I'm in an instruction manual zone right now where I want to say something along the lines of like, understand the entire process. How like, can anybody do it? Is this for a novice? Or maybe I can understand the process, but can I actually do it? Or will I mess up my car if I'm a novice? So I don't know. That I feel like a little bit can be added there just to include again the audience, and maybe I feel like a why, like why is it, like you say, the writer says here refinishing is costly. Is that a reason for why somebody should do refinish it themselves? Because here the writer is saying, okay, classic automobile owners do it themselves, but they don't get the results they want. So they need to understand the entire process. So is it, if they understand the process, like they'll be able to save a lot of money, and it'll like that. I think I'm trying to, this is the why, like why refinish it yourself, and why understand the entire like I understand understanding the entire process. Like obviously you want to understand the entire process. That's like a given. But it's more like, what's the the ultimate benefit, like the ultimate takeaway from this process essay, I think is what's needed in this introduction. Correct preparation, I don't think that P needs capitalized, is the key. I don't think an article is needed there. Is key to a flawless finish. Firstly, you need to, this is second person, you need to remove the existing finish. I've already done this, but I think grammatically, this can be done chemically with a paint softener stripper, or mechanically, no commas necessary there, mechanically by sanding. Should you opt for the chemical option, be sure to remove any residue before undertaking the next step. And this is a place where we want to move the adverb to to the proper place, which is before the verb, because the adverb qualifies the verb, and correctly dispose of it. Following this, that's an introductory phrase, so commas needed before the grammatical subject. You will need to apply several coats of primer to the bare surface, no comma needed, followed by, that's the wrong by, a fine dust coat of a contrasting color. Okay, I also want to bring attention to the topic sentence, because remember, the topic sentence of a paragraph is what should constitute all the content of the full paragraph. So right now, everything is just preparation and finish, right? Or just preparation. That's like the main idea of that topic sentence. Correct preparation is key to a flawless finish. Followed by a fine dust coat of a contrasting color. This is another good example of backward-forward writing. The dust coat will highlight high and low spots in the subsequent flattening. I read this and I was like, I don't understand that. So that needed a little bit more explanation, the high and low spots. Needs clarification. Once the primer has fully hardened, that is an introductory phrase, needs a comma. It is time to begin block sanding. I'm presuming all of this has to do with preparation. Using a medium grit sandpaper and a block, and begin sanding. What? Okay, the writing here is a little confusing. Using a medium grit sandpaper. I don't know if, again, the article is necessary here. Using medium grit sandpaper and a block. I might do this, actually. Block sanding. I might connect these. My note here is, and this is only because I do work with furniture, so I do understand the nitty-gritty of sanding, is whether or not that needs more information. Block sanding. You do say medium grit sandpaper and a block. In terms of how the sanding actually works, like the motions, how long, like, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know, because again, it depends on the audience. If the audience will know, that's one thing, but like if I were writing about sanding furniture, I would be getting real specific here. About exactly what to do about the sanding. And it would be probably 5 or 6 sentences. I'm trying to think of a transitional tag here. Maybe I'll just use after. And once high spots and low spots will have hopefully that get more qualification, this will now make sense. High spots, you don't even, I'm writing wordier than I need to. High spots will be indicated by the dust coat being removed quickly, and low spots, and this is actually needs a comma there because it's a run-on without it. Low spots will be indicated by patches of the dust coat remaining. It may be necessary to apply additional coats of primer to obtain a perfectly flat surface. By following these steps, you will build a solid foundation for a flawless finish. Perfect. So, yeah, paragraph is well within the topic sentence. So everything's good. This is all about preparation, and it is all ends perfectly because this is a really nice, this is what we call framing. Framing is you have put a nice like square frame around something. You could frame each of your body paragraphs, and you can also frame your entire essay by ending something by referring back to something that you mentioned earlier. So this refers back nicely to that topic sentence and the concept of the flawless finish. So there's a nice frame around this body paragraph. Okay, moving on to the next one, and we'll look at the topic sentence here. I know this is, whoops, wrong letter there. Application of modern polyurethane paint systems is an art form if carried out properly. This is another place where we want to move that adverb, if properly. And we don't want that because then we're ending with a preposition. So if properly, what's another word than carried out? Executed. The first step is to degrease the previous. This is just a suggestion. How words are hyphenated. It's really like depends on. I would hyphenate this just because if it's, I know technically this is correct, but sometimes it's like, okay, I want to hyphenate it because I really want to emphasize that it's degrease, not decrease. You know, we can do that with words if we want to emphasize that it's something else, but I mean, you can keep it the way it is. Degrease the previously flattened surface with solvent and remove dust with a tack rag. At this point, as introductory phrase for the grammatical subject, you are ready to apply the base coat. This needs a semicolon, I believe. Filter the paint into the cup of your spray gun. Actually, I would do a colon there. Sorry. Filter the paint into the cup of your spray gun. Should the color be metallic, a tip is to add 2 glass marbles to the paint cup. Okay, good idea. Yeah, these marbles will agitate the paint as you spray, keeping good use of comma before an ing verb, keeping the metallic particles evenly distributed in the finish. In a filtered spray booth, yep, apply the base coat in 2 to 3 full wet coats, allowing, we need a comma before that ing verb, allowing manufacturer specified, and that needs hyphenated because those are both qualifying. Oh boy, we've got manufacturer specified flash off times. We have 2 hyphenated different compound things happening there that are all qualifying times. Hold on. Allowing manufacturer specified flash off times between, that's a preposition, so between what? Between the coats. I'm just gonna put because it has to be between something, and the only thing I could think of here is the coats, unless I'm misreading something here. The step is important as reactions can occur. Chemical reactions can occur if the previous coat is still gassing off when the next is applied. Once complete and the specified time has passed, that's an introductory phrase for a grammatical subject, needs a comma, it is time to apply the clear coat. The clear, can we say coat again? That gives us a nice backward forward. The clear coat is applied in the same manner, wrong, that's a homophone there, manner as the base coat, semicolon. This is what we call a buried however. It's buried in the middle of a sentence with a semicolon, however, comma. However, you may want to use extra quotes to allow for the subsequent color sanding. Now here you have, the student does write in British English, but here they're using the American English, so I'm just going to give that your British English, you. And subsequent color sanding, and that's a hyphen, color sanding process and protection of your new masterpiece. We go back to the topic sentence here. This is about the application of the modern polyurethane paint systems. I'm gonna, that's plural. I'm just asking as a dummy, as a dumb reader, should that be plural? You know as the writer better than I do. And this has to, so this paragraph all has to do with the application of the paint, I'm guessing, and that's based on that topic sentence, and that is what it has to do with. It has to do with the application of the base coat and the application of the clear coat. Okay, so if we go on to the next paragraph, using the proper technique to color sand. I don't know if you, I'm just doing it. You can change it if you want, but using the proper technique to color sand will result in a flawless finish. Okay, that's our topic sentence. The application of the clear, I'm just going to say it, I'm just going to add it, will result in a texture not too dissimilar to orange peel. Yep, know exactly what you're talking about. To remove this texture and unlock a glass-like, that gets a hyphen, glass-like shine color, comma, sanding is required. Begin by wet sanding, comma, ing verb, using fine grade, you're making me use a lot of hyphens here, fine grade sandpaper and a block. Take extra care at edges and crease lines where the I'm sorry, I'm going to keep saying clear coat, will be thinner, as you do not want to rub through the clear coat. I don't know if people who are avid refinishes or avid car enthusiasts just refer to it as clear, then just get rid of my coats. If they're just like the clear, if that's just like how they refer to it as, you know better than I do. When you are satisfied, comma, that's an introductory phrase, you have removed the texture. When you are satisfied, you have removed the texture, comma, apply, and notice that there's not always a subject present, and this is what we call an implied subject. Because technically there would be, you apply a cutting compound, or you should apply, right? So it's what we call an implied subject. So a comma still goes there, even though there's technically not an explicit subject. Apply a cutting compound to a microfiber machine buffer and buff to a shine. Again, this correct use of a semicolon. Again, being cautious at edges and crease lines. To protect this new flawless shine, apply a good quality wax or sealer. I don't think we need good. I hate that word. You can just say quality, right? Doesn't that get that gets the point across, right? Quality wax or sealer. Okay, and that explains how to get rid of that color sand to get that flawless finish. And then we get into the conclusion. Refinishing an automobile is no mean feat. We need that buried, however, with a semicolon. However, if you have the facilities, no comma there, That's comma splice, and follow the process described, maybe described above. Um, the sat. Uh, yep, because we have a comma here. So this is, however, introductory phrase. Sort of. It's more like a non-restrictive clause here. The satisfaction of completing this task yourself is really something. See, that's kind of that human dimension part that, or that answering of the question of like, why is this process essay, like answering the why, like why is this worth it, is really something. If you do not have the facilities or the process is overwhelming, leave it to the professionals to avoid disappointment. Okay. Are there places, I'm just curious, even if you don't own it, are there places you can rent, like, to do this? Because I don't know if that's an option for somebody. So, like, for example, I record a lot of videos for my students and for other things that I do for Embry Riddle. So am planning on recording or renting out a professional recording studio, which luckily in Los Angeles I have a lot of options. I don't own one, and I can't afford a house at all, let alone a space big enough, let alone the equipment to build one. So I can rent one. Is renting a space doable for this type of work? So that would be an option. If it's just you either have to have the facilities and all this equipment, or you have to go to a professional. If those are the two options, then those are the two options, right? But if there's a, can I, use your facilities to do this work, if that's an option at all, maybe someone would still do it themselves if they could. I have no idea. Like I said, I'm not a car person. So the conclusion is a little short. It's only 2 sentences. A paragraph technically is 5 to 7 sentences. So conclusion is a bit short. So how can you provide some further, usually what we want to do in conclusions is do what we call like further thought, like further thought. How can you provide some further thought in your conclusion in addition to summing up, which is usually how students phrase that, I guess, is kind of like wrapping up, or like, here's what I said, or here's what I, talked about in my essay. But if there's anything additional, that could be given in the usually in the essay, it's like you have body paragraphs where you have to talk about certain things. And then in the conclusion, it's like, okay, finally, I didn't have space in my intro or my body paragraphs, but now I can put this in my conclusion because it's relevant, but it doesn't fit in the rest of my essay because it's just adjacent to what I wanted to talk about in my paper, but it wasn't directly relevant. So that's what you usually want for our paragraph or our conclusions. I also know this is a short essay, so but I think the student, so my major notes are like introduction needs some work and some specificity. Content-wise, the body paragraphs are good because there's good topic sentence, and then the content of the paragraphs are staying within what the topic sentence says the paragraph is going to be about. Conclusion, little short, leaving something to be desired. There was a lot of sentence level mechanic stuff. As you saw, I added, it was mostly commas and hyphens that I focused on. I think I may have moved like 2 adverbs It was mostly commas and hyphens. So other than that, I didn't really rewrite much. It was just mostly a lot of questions to the writer. So otherwise, I don't want this video to be a million hours long, but I did want to provide some, like I said, I don't have any student examples of the process essay, so I did want to provide something as you're working on your revisions that goes over kind of those two sources, those two online sources of what the process essay is, what they talk about, like the major takeaways, and then actually go over a process essay and walk through it, and then kind of give you my kind of, okay, here are my notes as I go through it, kind of what I'm looking at. Otherwise, if you have questions while you're working on this, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I look forward to reading these. All right. Thanks, guys.